The year 2020 was a time of deep racial reckoning across America that saw calls for racial and social justice. It was also during this year that the Architectural Heritage Center saw over 2 decades of work on Black history, culture, and architecture culminate in a project that will help protect places important to Portland's Black community. Black lives matter, and Black places matter too. African American properties have been identified as among the most at-risk resources in Portland. As the city continues to face development pressure and see these vulnerable structures are sitting on high-value land, more will disappear from the landscape and from our memory unless we take steps right away to identify, designate, and protect them.
Recently, I was asked to help research Louisa Flowers and her family who lived in Northeast Portland. And the research was going to contribute to a permanent exhibit that was going to be in a new housing project in her honor, named in her honor, Louisa Flowers. And as I was working on the project, I was driving, and I said, I need some inspiration, so I drove by the 2 sites that I knew that they lived in, that her family lived in. But at that moment, they were being torn down, they were being deconstructed. We don't know our history. I think if people really understood the significance of those 2 buildings, there would have been greater efforts to save those 2 sites.
There are 700 sites in Portland included in the National Register, the list of places considered worthy of preservation by the federal government. Of the over 95,000 entries in the National Register of Historic Places, only 2% focus on the experiences of Black Americans. What counts as being worthy of preservation depends on how you count. In the 1990s, a project of the Architectural Heritage Center called Cornerstones broke new ground by finding 1,284 sites related to Black culture and history in Portland. This project counted sites that were meaningful to the stories and experiences of Black Portlanders, not just because they had architectural significance.
I would say Geneva's hair salon is one. Now, it's not architecturally significant in any way, but the events that have occurred there. And there was just a lovely article in the paper about my friend, the mayor of MLK. And Paul has now turned 90, and he has many, many stories and many activities occurred there. That's one of them. I would also have to say the Rutherford House is something that I'm glad was preserved and is now on the National Register. And my particular love, the Billy Webb's Elks Lodge. That is a wonderful building, started out as a YMCA for African Americans and now is also on the National Register of Historic Places.
Some of the studios of the artists who still have not been acknowledged, like Al Goldsby, Charles Tatum. Adrienne Cruz is a phenomenal Black woman artist here who's done a lot of public artworks, and her house, she is made into a work of art.
In the summer of 2020, Portland's Black places were recognized by the National Park Service with a listing on the National Register, an outcome of a 3-year project that the Architectural Heritage Center undertook with the city of Portland.
When you don't feel like you have ownership of your community, you're not really motivated to be engaged. And I think for our young people, they need to know that people settle here, mother and daughter across the Oregon Trail and built homes. You have people who were enslaved Africans that came with slave owners and eventually was emancipated and owned property before 1926 when it was legal to do so. And I think that's very significant to the culture, and that's why historic preservation is so important, to help keep what's there and to remind us of what the community was like before gentrification. They need to understand their history to empower them to make a difference in their own community.
I feel that it's very important for people to know their past. It helps them inform their present, and it helps inform their future. And if we don't preserve or save some of the things from the past, we become unanchored we don't know where we come from. And that's one of the things that's really important to me. The people in our community need to understand that the chapters of the book about the history of Portland are missing, and we need to keep adding those chapters to the story because they're all interrelated.
A building is an archive, a home is an archive and a collection.
Our work is not over. One site at a time, we can change what history we preserve.